Please see the link in the description to download a worksheet for this video. If you've not already done so, we suggest that you watch the video introducing area before watching this video. In the prior video, we met Susie. She and her son want to paint this big piece of wood and need to know how many cans of paint to buy. The wood is 8 feet high and 6 feet wide. Each can of paint can cover 50 square feet. In order to answer this question, we first need to learn how to calculate the area of rectangles and squares. In this video, we'll learn the definitions of a rectangle and a square, the formula for calculating the area of a rectangle and a square, how to apply this formula to a complex shape, and how to solve the problem that Susie has described. Let's start with the definitions of a rectangle and square. A rectangle has 4 sides. The sides that are next to each other are different lengths, and all the corners are 90-degree angles. Here's an example of a rectangle. It has 4 sides. The lengths of 2 sides next to each other are different. In this rectangle, one side is 3 feet long and one side is 4 feet long. Here, one side is 4 feet long and one side is 3 feet long. All the corners have angles that are 90 degrees. As a reminder, a 90-degree angle is the name for an angle that's between a line that is perfectly horizontal, like the green one, and another line that is perfectly vertical, like the brown one. In contrast, this angle is not 90 degrees. There are only 45 degrees between these two line segments. Likewise, this angle is not 90 degrees. There are 135 degrees between these two line segments. On our math tests, the test makers often draw a tiny square in one or more corners of a shape. That tells us that corner has a 90-degree angle. If the other corners look like 90 degrees, then we can assume that all of them are 90 degrees. Sometimes we can only see part of that square. Here's what the squares look like in a real estate exam question. It doesn't matter if the horizontal side is longer or shorter than the vertical side. We still call both of these rectangles. For example, on the left, the horizontal sides are 5 inches, but on the right the horizontal sides are 2 inches. It's common for test makers to write only the length of one horizontal side if the shape is a rectangle. Usually they write the length near the bottom horizontal side. But we still know that both of the horizontal sides are the same length. Likewise, it's common for test makers to write the length of one vertical side if the shape is a rectangle. But we know that both of the vertical sides are the same length. Sometimes you'll see a rectangle rotated like this, but the little square tells us this angle is 90 degrees. If you turn the paper or your head, you can more easily recognize that this is a rectangle. Here, 2 sides are horizontal and 2 sides are vertical. Here's a quiz question. Is this shape a rectangle? This shape has 4 sides, and the sides that are next to each other are different lengths. But all of the angles are not 90 degrees. In fact, none of the angles are 90 degrees. The blue angles are only 45 degrees, and the green angles are 135 degrees. This shape is not a rectangle. We'll learn its name in a future video. We use names to describe a rectangle's size so that we can use a formula to calculate its area. The length of this side is called the rectangle's base. The length of this side is called the rectangle's height. In the rectangle on the left, the base is 5 inches and the height is 2 inches. In the rectangle on the right, the base is 2 inches and the height is 5 inches. Next, we'll learn the definition of a square. A square has 4 sides. The sides are the same length, and all the corners are 90-degree angles. A square and a rectangle have a lot in common since both have 4 sides and all of their angles are 90 degrees. But in a square, all of the sides are the same length. Whereas in a rectangle, any 2 sides that are touching each other are different lengths. Just like we do with a rectangle, we can describe the size of a square by measuring the length of its base and the length of its height. But since it's a square, we know that all of the sides are the same length. Next, let's learn the formula for calculating the area of rectangles and squares. Here's a typical math question. What's the area inside this black rectangle that has a base of 3 inches and a height of 2 inches? If this rectangle was drawn on grid paper like this, then we could find the total area inside the rectangle by counting up the number of square inches. In this case, there are 6 squares, so the area of this rectangle is 6 square inches. But what if we're shown a rectangle like this? Here the height is 20 inches and the base is 30 inches. We could count up all of the squares, but it would take a long time and we might make a mistake. So instead of counting up squares, we use a formula to calculate the area inside a rectangle. Here's the formula for the area of a rectangle. The area equals the base times the height. Let's use the formula to calculate the area of the small rectangle. To calculate the area of this rectangle, we do 3 steps. Step 1. Write out the formula. The formula is area equals the base times the height. Step 2. Substitute the words with numbers. The base is 3 inches and the height is 2 inches. Step 3. Do the calculation. 3 times 2 equals 6. So the area of this rectangle is 6 square inches. Now we can apply this formula to that giant rectangle. To calculate the area of this rectangle, we do 3 steps. Step 1. Write out the formula. The formula is area equals the base times the height. Step 2. Substitute the words with numbers. The base is 30 inches and the height is 20 inches. Step 3. Do the calculation. We'll use a calculator. 30 times 20 equals 600. So the area of this rectangle is 600 square inches. We use the same formula to calculate the area of a square. The area of a square is the base times the height. In this case, one side is 4 centimeters. Since it's a square, that tells us that all of the sides are 4 centimeters long. Since this square was rotated, we've redrawn it so that 2 sides are horizontal and 2 sides are vertical. To calculate the area of a rectangle or square, we do 3 steps. Step 1. Write out the formula. The formula is area equals the base times the height. Step 2. Substitute the words with numbers. The base is 4 centimeters and the height is 4 centimeters. Step 3. Do the calculation. 4 times 4 equals 16. So the area of this square is 16 square centimeters. Next, let's see how we can apply this formula to a complex shape. What's the total area of this shape? We're given grid lines, so we could just count up the number of tiny squares to find the total area. But it's a big number, and we could easily make a mistake. So, we'll do a calculation instead. To solve this problem, we break this complex shape into 2 smaller rectangles and a square. There's a blue rectangle, a pink rectangle, and a yellow square. Our strategy is to calculate the area of each of these smaller shapes, then add up their areas to find the total area of the big shape. We'll start with the blue rectangle. Its base is 14 meters and its height is 4 meters. To calculate the area of a rectangle or square, we do 3 steps. Step 1. Write out the formula. The formula is area equals the base times the height. Step 2. Substitute the words with numbers. The base is 14 meters and the height is 4 meters. Step 3. Do the calculation. 4 times 14 equals 56. So the area of this rectangle is 56 square meters. The pink rectangle has a base that's 31 meters and a height that's 18 meters. To calculate the area of a rectangle or square, we do 3 steps. Step 1. Write out the formula. The formula is area equals the base times the height. Step 2. Substitute the words with numbers. The base is 31 meters and the height is 18 meters. Step 3. Do the calculation. 31 times 18 equals 558. So the area of the pink rectangle is 558 square meters. The yellow square has a base that's 2 meters and its height is 2 meters. To calculate the area of a rectangle or square, we do 3 steps. Step 1. Write out the formula. The formula is area equals the base times the height. Step 2. Substitute the words with numbers. The base is 2 meters and the height is 2 meters. Step 3. Do the calculation. 2 times 2 equals 4. So the area of the yellow square is 4 square meters. Now we can add up these smaller areas. We'll use a calculator to add up 56 plus 558 plus 4, and we get 618. The total area of this shape is 618 square meters. Now we're ready to solve the problem that Susie described. This piece of wood is shaped like a rectangle. The base of the rectangle is 6 feet, and the height is 8 feet. To calculate the area of a rectangle or square, we do 3 steps. Step 1. Write out the formula. The formula is area equals the base times the height. Step 2. Substitute the words with numbers. The base is 6 feet and the height is 8 feet. Step 3. Do the calculation. 6 times 8 equals 48, so the area of this rectangle is 48 square feet. Each can of paint covers 50 square feet, so Susie and her son only need 1 can of paint to paint this entire wall. Thanks for your attention.